right. And we are live, and we are with Jim Roemke, Pastor Jim Roemke.
Nice
Doctorate Jim Roemke.
Nope, just Pastor Jim Roemke.
Just Pastor Jim Roemke?
Just Pastor Jim Roemke.
Are you thinking about a doctorate?
Nope.
If you did, what would you study?
Probably interpretive dance. I always thought I got,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is that because of kind of your like Hispanic heritage?
No,
Do you have Hispanic heritage?
Nope.
No?
I'm German.
You're German?
Through and through.
Okay.
Through and through.
Are you glad that you're German?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. You're proud of the German heritage?
Started 2 world wars. Pretty baller.
What's the joke? It's like Germany declared war against the world.
Yeah. What's to be embarrassed about? But I don't condone world wars.
Yes. So for the record, Jim Roemke does not condone
not
world wars.
for it.
Yeah.
I'm against it.
Against it.
I just want people to stop dying.
So can you just do Trump impersonations this whole time?
Yeah, the whole time. Yeah. I love it. Once I get into it, it's hard to get out of it.
Yeah. So go ahead.
It's such a fun way of talking, and it's just fun to do it.
Yeah. So you just went viral.
Yeah.
That's what 5 million views or something like that.
That's what my kids tell me.
Yeah. That's about what we get here too. We usually get about 5 million views when we post a video.
Okay. Well, I'd like to see the numbers for that, please.
So you did the opening prayer.
The closing prayer.
The closing prayer at the RNC.
At the second session of the RNC on Monday.
And how far away were you from Donald Trump?
I don't know, because I didn't know where he was at in relation to me.
Okay.
It was a huge setup, so almost as big as the Bugenhagen conference.
Almost, yeah.
Huge, so big and beautiful. And it was just a surreal thing to be out there. And I didn't know, nobody knew that Trump was going to be there until like maybe an hour before.
Okay. So did you know an hour before?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's when I asked if I could do a Trump impersonation.
So that was not something pre-planned?
Nope. Not until I got there.
So an hour before, you're about to go up and
Yep.
pray. Are you nervous?
I suppose, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think about things too much.
Yeah.
It makes it complicated.
I can't emphasize how little I think of things.
Yes. You know what? A lot of people say they think about me, and I say, I don't think about you at all.
So you go up, and this whole stadium is just completely full.
Yeah.
And can you redo it for us? What you did for those that didn't see?
Yeah. It's just, you're going to be so blessed. You're going to be tired of being blessed. Believe me. And I do the little YMCA dance. It was awesome.
And the crowd went wild.
They did.
And Trump was dying.
He smiled, yeah. The dude got shot in the head 2 days before. And here I come out and make him smile.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing to consider as Christians is, it's always good to boldly proclaim our theology, but the way in which we do it is important too.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't tell jokes from the pulpit. I'm not a clown in the pulpit. But, think about if you have a pastor come visit you and, you're doing pretty roughly, doing poor. If you can make anybody smile at something that's wholesome and well-intended,
mm-hmm.
the devil doesn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
That just cuts away all of his power. The devil doesn't like to be mocked.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's an important thing anytime.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's something that I really love, making people laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'd get a doctorate in like stand-up comedy or something. I don't know. But
That'd be good.
I think that I would like to do that. I'm not going to, but I always watch comedians making people laugh and smile is fun.
Do you have a favorite comedian?
Not really. So many are so vulgar.
Yeah.
I like, it's good to laugh at things that are not blasphemous or blatantly sinful, but
mm-hmm.
I try to just laugh at the ridiculousness of life.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good thing. And laugh at things that are that the devil doesn't want us to laugh at.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's good. And so with comedians today, some of them do a fairly good job of that at times, but they always have to bring in, the bad things that we shouldn't laugh about.
Mm-hmm. And it's a different feeling. Like when you laugh at something pure, like it really is joyful. When you laugh at something bad, or vulgar, like you said, there's almost like a guilt.
The devil does like that. He likes when we laugh at things that are sinful and bad. I believe that. But I think especially to laugh at ourselves. And this is honestly one of the reasons why I personally, I really do like President Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Not because he's such a wholesome, great guy, but he doesn't take himself seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Think about any other politician. Think about, if I had been asked to do a prayer at the Democratic National Convention which I'm never going to be asked to do that. First of all, they would never allow the prayer that I prayed. Secondly,
because you started in the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and other things
I
too.
prayed against the sins of pride. They're not going to like that.
Didn't you pray against Satan or the demons? Or the
demonic attacks. Yeah.
So you directly attacked their God.
Yeah, exactly. And also think about not only Democratic politicians, but Republican politicians. They don't like to be made fun of.
Yeah.
They can't stand it. Donald Trump doesn't mind. He embraces it. And I think that that's a good thing as Christians for us to look at the ridiculousness of our own sins and just kind of say, yeah, this is ridiculous. Not to glory in it, but just say, this is so stupid. Why are we doing this? This is something that my wife and I all the time, we'll get in an argument about something. And at some point, like we're arguing and I'll just be like, this is the dumbest thing ever. Why are we arguing about this? This is so stupid. And, then I try to turn it into a laugh. And if you can laugh at those kind of things, it takes a lot of power out of it. I think that's an important thing for people to do. Well, the world is serious on its own. And the world wants to be taken seriously. When we don't take the world seriously, we're showing the world, you're not my God. When we take God seriously and don't mock God, but take him seriously, I think that's a good thing too, to remind ourselves that there are things that aren't God, many things that aren't God. They should be mocked. God cannot be mocked, but everything else can be. It's on the table, and it's fun to laugh in the face of death.
And there's different types of like comedy, and they're not all equal.
No.
And I don't know what your thought on like sarcasm is, but I'm not a fan of sarcasm.
I think sarcasm is too biting.
Yes. Yeah.
And sarcasm,
it's a tearing down.
I do it, and I shouldn't as much as I do. I'm sarcastic, and I know within myself, I have the tendency to like see other people's weaknesses and I want to go after them. And that's bad because unless they're in on the joke, like that's a good thing. If they can be like, oh yeah, that's what I do and I'm dumb, that's fine. But if you do something and you can tell this is something that I pressed on them, I shouldn't have pressed, and that hurts them, that shouldn't be done.
Yeah.
I don't think that's helpful. But I think like honestly, one comedian that always makes me laugh is an old school comedian, Don Rickles. He had this great ability to just like make fun of everyone, and he didn't really seem to hurt anybody's feelings because they all knew they were all in the joke. They're like, this is what this guy does. Yeah. So this is okay. I mean, he's not doing it to be mean. This is just what he does. It's a way he kind of shows affection for people. And, I try to do that. I mean, when I'm here at the Bugenhagen conference, that's why they put me at the front table is I see guys and I try not like, and I try to be very sensitive. Like if I can tell I went too far with some guy, I'm like, okay, don't do that again with this guy. But I mean, if you see some guy that looks like Richard Simmons' son walking around, you're going to say, you look like Richard Simmons' son. That's crazy. And they can laugh at that. That's good. Yeah. And I think it's good for us all, especially as Christians, to learn not to take ourselves too seriously because we're not the center of the universe.
Yeah. We are, one of my favorite types of comedy is like self-deprecating.
Oh, I love that. I always do that.
Yeah, if you can embrace that, it's one of the most joyful types of. I love getting together with buddies and being like, "You remember when we did this?" Like, how dumb.
We're not really buddies yet. I mean, I just met you. Yeah, but I'm looking at you. You're very put together. What do you look at yourself and say? Oh, my eyes are too blue. My hair is too blonde. My suit coat's too tailored. What do you? I mean, yeah. I'm too fit. What? I mean, I got plenty of material. What do you make fun of yourself about?
If we turn this camera around, for one, I got a big old bald spot.
I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah. Thank you. You're a kind man.
I mean, I've got nice, luscious.
That's why I thought.
Beautiful hair. Yeah. Everybody says it's.
That's why I thought you were Hispanic at the beginning.
That's
your hair's too
Ramirez.
Good for German. Well, that's the thing. We've got Josh DeYoung. We've got Ramirez.
Josh DeYoung, Ramirez. Yeah. I like to think of if I could choose anything to be besides German, it would be Italian. Yeah. Because they were friends, Yeah. They were friends for a little while. We all know. Yeah. And they've got beautiful hair. Yeah. Dark, beautiful hair. Yeah. Beautiful mustaches. Look at this fellow over here. He could be Luigi for crying out loud. Isn't that fun to just be able to look at somebody and say, hey, you look like Luigi on the Mario Brothers, and he laughs at it. That's a nice thing to do.
Yeah. No, Bennett's great at this. Bennett's job. Think about this, okay? So you're 25, 24? 24, recent graduate from University of Nebraska. He played hockey there. And he's now traveled on numerous occasions with us to like Wyoming, where we do like 7 interviews with like past, he's basically hanging around pastors all the time. And he's got to be like in the room.
It's pretty exhausting.
Like traveling, like up, hanging out with them throughout the night.
Yeah.
Like, and he hangs. Like, that's not easy. Hanging with pastors can be.
It's not. I mean, that's why sometimes I have to just go sit in a little dark room.
Yeah.
When I'm at Bugenhagen. I've had too much. It's too much for me.
Too many pastors.
Too much pastoring. Well, look, I mean, you look like you just came off the ABC affiliate for like Minneapolis or something.
Yeah. They wouldn't have me.
Oh, come on.
They wouldn't have me.
Okay. Well, whatever.
So you asked earlier about like, what do I laugh at? I've got, Alex Sable says it well. He's like, you always find the most difficult way to get to something. So he's like, there's so many times where we just land in like the most ridiculous situations because like you couldn't take the easy path. You got to go on the long path. Mm-hmm. But I find there's so many like events in my life where I look, I'm like, what an idiot. Like you could have taken 2 steps there and gotten there, but you went on this route. And it's just kind of funny to look back and just reflect on the dumb things that you find yourself in.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I do that just to myself all the time. An inner monologue, I'll forget my keys or something. I'm like, hey, you idiot. Why did you do this? You do this all the time. I mean, I don't need any. And then I think, oh, you're really dumb. I mean, you left your keys upstairs. You walked upstairs twice a day. It's the 3rd time's a heart attack. Why are you putting yourself to this trouble, buddy?
Yeah.
You shouldn't forget these things.
Yeah. Did you go to Fort Wayne or St. Louis?
St. Louis.
You went to St. Louis?
Yeah.
You probably know David Scare.
Yeah.
You've heard his name.
Yeah, I've talked to him before. I like his humor.
He's got a good humor.
He does.
Yeah.
I like that humor.
And he would always say, Lutheranism is the best show in town.
Yeah. And nobody's watching. It's the best show. It's got terrible ratings, but it's kind of like Arrested Development. Nobody's watching it, but it's really funny.
When you take that mentality, it makes church so much more fun. When you just realize, like, sometimes I look at people and I'm like, you had a very different like background than me, and your mind works very different. And when you take like a handful of people from completely different backgrounds and their minds process things in completely different ways, and you say, now all of you work together on things that are really important, and we'll see how this goes. Like it is, it's the best show in town.
Yeah.
Like it's absolutely hilarious.
It is
in a beautiful way.
And I think that's important too. When as pastors, to look at it as like, okay, this is just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I can get all worked up about it and be like, oh, maybe we'll put a sign saying, wash your dishes. Your mom doesn't live here. It could be like, oh, this is dumb. I hate this. Or you just be like, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen me with Marge before at my church, right? I make fun of her all the time. She's like an 86-year-old woman. Mm-hmm. I'm so mean to her, and she loves me. Mm-hmm. But I love her too. And that's the thing too. When you have real love behind humor, mm-hmm. Love covers a multitude of sins. Mm-hmm. So you can be really honest with people in a way that's lighthearted and still fun, and get your point across, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lady in our church, she comes in and she's just absolutely a joy. But she's always just joking on herself, right? Mm-hmm. She'll talk. She's got to do a walker now. And I think it was last Saturday night at her service, and she comes in and she's like, I forget what she said, but it was something along the lines of just like, and look at me, I've got this thing, and look how dumb it looks. Like that, and she wasn't like looking for comfort. She was just laughing about it. She's like, look at this.
And you notice this in the pastoral ministry when you deal with the elderly. And you get the elderly who they're just sour and bitter about, I'm old and I can't do anything. And I just can't wait to die, blah, 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 all the time. I understand. I mean, yeah, it's tough. You lost all your friends. Your family's gone. The world's changed. And you get some old people who are just like, yeah, it's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm just going to love life. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to live it and take it as it comes.
Mm-hmm. Embrace your 80s, right? Yeah. Embrace your 20s.
Yeah. But I think too that we should be mindful that, and I try to be mindful that not everyone wants to laugh. Mm-hmm. So I've got to put that on the brakes too. Mm-hmm. And I also try to be mindful that while I don't take myself seriously, I must take my vocation seriously.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I must take the conduct of the divine service seriously. Mm-hmm. And my congregation knows, like, there's the Pastor Roemke who is standing at the Lord's altar in the stead and by the command of Jesus Christ. And he can't be a clown. Mm-hmm. And there's the Pastor Roemke who is totally a clown all the time. Mm-hmm. And I think it helps people to see this when pastors make a distinction. However, having said that, like, not all people have those distinctions. Mm-hmm. Some people are just serious all the time. It's okay.
Where do you think the desire comes to be the jokester in front of the church on Sunday?
Well, I think to try to put the best construction on things, I think it comes from a desire to make people feel good. Because, pastors do want to do that. And that's one of our crosses to bear. I mean, pastors like to be liked by people.
Mm-hmm.
If they didn't like to be liked by people, they wouldn't want to put themselves in that position many times. And I think that can be a part of the desire. And I think part of the desire, and I will say, like at the Republican National Convention when I did that, it was a real temptation for me just to ham it up even more.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had them, they were loving it. I was really feeding off all that energy, and I'm like, I could do more. But you've got to learn the boundaries of how far you go in this and when you need to stop. And I think that's just something that you just have to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can teach it to anybody.
Yeah.
You just have to be cognizant of your crowd, your audience, what you're doing, what you're there for. I mean, as you notice, like in that video, when I was done with the Trump impersonation, I was very serious then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like no nonsense.
It was a great transition because you started with in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It's like everyone's laughing. You had just done that. And you're like, I think you said, let us pray.
Yeah.
In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And at that
everyone stopped.
3 seconds later, it's like, okay, we're doing something different now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, so I wonder if this has ever happened to you, just because people know, I'm guessing your congregation knows that, you've got a good sense of humor. They're used to laughing around you. In my first church, the previous pastor was like that in a beautiful way. He was just naturally, he just would laugh at himself. He had this self-deprecating humor. And I think he did it naturally from the pulpit. Yeah. Like he wasn't telling jokes or trying.
Yeah.
I
bring some humor in, but I'm just joyful. And I am when I'm, and that's the thing too, like in preaching, there is a certain element that you have to bring some of yourself to it because you are delivering this message.
Mm-hmm. God is working through you.
Yeah. And so God will use this, and I will employ humor in natural ways, but not like in stilted, like I'm an 80s stand-up comic just doing one-liners.
Yeah, yeah.
Like one of my favorites is like in the Old Testament, whenever we have a reading from the Old Testament where it's the people of Israel wandering through the wilderness and they're whining, we have no food and we loathe this worthless food. I mean, I think that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, I bring that up almost every time that comes along. Like, I've got 2 teenage daughters. They're just like this. They stand in front of the refrigerator. Oh, we don't have any food and we loathe this worthless food. Ma, what are we going to do? And I think that's good to laugh at them and say, look how stupid they were. Mm-hmm. They had everything that they needed and all they do is whine and complain. Let's laugh at this because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't think that's the same as like telling jokes. It's
right. Or making it about yourself.
No, like it's about the human reality of like, who amongst us as Christians who have the gifts of God's word and his sacraments, and he comes to us in his divine service and we complain and grumble about what? The seats are too hard. Oh, the service is going a little late. Wah, 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 wah. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, stop being a baby. You've got everything you need.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you can show people the ridiculousness and the humor in other people doing these things, I think it can help them see a little bit more like, yeah, I do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And it's stupid. I shouldn't do it.
Yeah. What does Chesterton say? He says angels fly because they don't take themselves too seriously.
I guess.
Levity.
Yeah. It sounds like something.
Yeah. Sounds like something Chesterton might say.
I guess, yeah. He said a lot of things.
No one's fact checking us at home.
You could just say you just said it. It sounded nice.
Brian Stecker said.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But so I wonder if this has happened to you. So, my previous pastor, my previous church, because he retired and he stayed in the church, which worked great because he was as humble as could be. Does not always work. It worked well there.
It doesn't often.
But this happened probably 2 or 3 times to me where I would be, and he had this big voice, right? So when he laughed, everyone laughed. And there'd be times where I'd be saying something that was not meant to be funny. It was not funny. Mm-hmm. And he thought it was funny and he would just laugh. And all of a sudden the whole congregation's laughing. And I'm like, I'm not sure what we're laughing at, but like, okay, we'll reset here. But I don't know if that's ever happened where people just like, because they know your personality, they just laugh. Yeah. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I suppose it probably does.
Yeah. But
I don't mind if anybody laughs at anything I say.
Yeah.
It's okay.
So when you were at the RNC, okay, what are the things that you observe, right? So, I mean, what was it like going in there? You said you're in like a green room.
Yeah. It was really a weird experience. Mm-hmm. I mean, not a bad one at all. I didn't really know exactly what to expect because I'd never done this before. But I got there at, I don't know, I was supposed to be there at 11:30. And then they'd hyped up all the security for good reason. Mm-hmm. So it took me forever to get to the actual convention hall. And then they put me in this room and I was sitting there and almost all the speakers that came through that night were in the room. Mm-hmm. And most of them made a point of like saying hello to me and very kind to me. Mm-hmm. I was dressed like I am now. Mm-hmm. They were very nice, very respectful. sat next to the Archbishop of the Milwaukee Diocese for quite a while. He was doing the invocation at the beginning of that session, and talked with him for a while. And we were kind of in this group. He had a couple of assistants, and everyone kind of assumed I was with him. But it was just really interesting, just kind of sit back and watch all these politicians. And like, I didn't know who a lot of them were, but if they'd sit down next to me, I'd be like, "Oh, hi, what do you do?" And they'd be like, "I'm the governor of so-and-so." I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I don't know that. I'm not from there."
Yeah.
But it was interesting to see this. I mean, it was interesting. Amber Rose, who I did not know who she was.
Tell Amber Rose is, who is she?
Well, I still don't really know.
Okay.
My daughter said she dated somebody that was was it Kanye or somebody? Was it Kanye? Yeah. Was Khalifa. He probably gave her those beautiful scalp tattoos. I wouldn't be surprised. But she walks in and very much like she's the celebrity of the night. And so she sits down.
Did you kneel down?
No, I just was sitting there.
Okay.
And she sat down next to me, was like looking on her phone. I said, "Oh, hi, I'm Pastor Jim Roemke. What do you do?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm Amber Rose." I'm like, "That's nice. What do you do?" "Well, I was a model for a while, and now I'm an entrepreneur." And I found out like some of her entrepreneurial tasks are not kosher exactly. But, you know, it's nice when you can just talk. She was very pleasant. She wasn't rude or dismissive. She was nice. It was just interesting. When I got home, my daughters were like, "You met Amber Rose." I'm like, I wish you didn't know who she was, because she doesn't seem like a good role model.
Yeah.
I mean, I could just tell by the scalp tattoos. It's probably not a person I want my kids hanging around with. But just sitting there and watching all these people, all these big wheelers and dealers coming in and out. And we went in at one point earlier in the day. There was a rumor that Trump was going to be there when J.D. Vance was announced as the vice president. And so the very nice lady who was kind of like my handler and all of these, she was kind of watching over all the speakers. She got me and the Archbishop and two of his assistants. And she said, "If we go in the convention hall right now, we'll be able to see him. But if we don't go right now, they're going to shut it down. Nobody can come in or out." So we went in, we're sitting there. He didn't come out. We're walking out. And this I thought was really funny. We're walking out. The Archbishop was walking in front of me. I'm walking behind him downstairs, and a very obviously Orthodox Jewish rabbi is walking up the stairs the other way. And we kind of just like looked at each other like, you know, everything okay here? We're good? And he walked by, and I tapped the Archbishop on the shoulder, and I said, "I think he's the third part of a joke about us." And he thought that was funny.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just little things like that. And I can tell you, like, just like walking across the convention floor, so many people came up to me, stopped me, asked me if I would have a prayer with them, if I'd give them a blessing. And I always said, like, "Yeah, I will, but I'm a Lutheran pastor. I don't want to have any false advertising here. So I'm a Lutheran pastor. The Catholics might charge you 20 for this. I'm only going to charge 10. I didn't really say that because we don't charge for our prayers.
Yeah.
But I was happy to pray with people. You know, just sitting there. I was there for like 13 hours the whole day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was the whole day thing.
Yeah.
So I was kind of sitting there hanging out, watching all these people. And it was a fascinating thing. And then, you know, as it was getting close to time, Trump came there. And that's when I decided that I'm going to ask if I can do a Trump impersonation, because I'd been kind of doing it here and there for people, and they thought it was funny. And the guy who was in charge of the speeches said, "Yeah, go for it, Padre." So I did it.
Can you teach me how to do a Trump impersonation?
You got to do the hands all the time with hands. Any way you talk with hands all the time, like this.
Out in front of me.
You got to do your lips kind of like, yeah, like, you know, and you got to just have a certain kind of confidence that whatever you say is absolutely the right thing all the time. Believe me. You got to put in things like believe me.
Believe me.
Believe me.
Believe me.
I guarantee it.
I guarantee it.
It's going to be huge.
It's going to be huge.
Yeah, that sort of thing. And you just kind of always, you know, you exaggerate everything. Like, this is the best, most beautiful studio I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen a mustache over there that it boggles the imagination, this thing. I mean, I've never believed I'd see somebody who's, 24 years old? He looks like he's been growing this thing for 25 years at least. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. And look at the young, I mean, he's just such a towering man. I mean, look at him. He stands head and shoulders above everybody else all the time. You just got to, I mean, that's what I love about it. I mean, it just, everything he says is like way over the top.
Yeah.
And I got to believe he knows he's doing that on purpose.
Yeah.
Because it's part of his shtick.
Yeah.
And it's just funny.
Yeah.
And I don't think he minds being laughed at.
Yeah.
And I love that about a person.
Yeah. I remember he was given, this was years ago. I think it was before he was elected president, and he had to give some kind of speech. It was some kind of formal speech. Maybe it was already president, but like the people in the room were not his fans.
Yeah.
Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Was that the correspondence dinner?
That sounds like, yeah.
Yeah.
And he basically said, he's like, he was joking on himself. And he's like, and can you imagine if I drank? You know, the whole point was like, he's already so extreme. Yeah. He's like, if I
can
drank.
Can you imagine? Like, believe me, if I had a couple in me, there'd be no stopping me. I love it. Yeah. That's so funny.
Yeah. So that was a good example.
And just the way, like, even when you watch him debate, like for the first time, just his like ridiculous nicknames for people.
Yeah.
It's just great.
And they've stuck.
And you know, they have, and this is what I love about it. He's talking to all these pompous politicians who take themselves so seriously, like, Lion Ted, you're really the worst. No one's ever, look at this guy. What was was it Paul Rand? Is that the guy?
Rand Paul?
Rand Paul, yeah, Rand Paul. You know, he's like, and Rand Paul's like, oh, what are we in junior high making fun of? He's like, believe me, I'd have plenty of material with you. And it's like, that's hilarious.
Yeah. You
got this like 50-year-old dude with curly hair, like, going on about stuff so seriously. He's like, believe me, I could make so much fun of you.
Yeah.
You would never stop crying. It's just great.
Yeah.
And when people make fun of him, he's like, I've never had any complaints with the size of my hands. Yeah. Who comes back with that? It's just a genius way of interacting with people. He just is so quick and so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets people and he takes them off guard and they just don't know what to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's hilarious.
Have you seen anyone that's able to roll with him, you know, to take it, right? Because your point is he gives that to someone.
I'd like to think that I could. I mean, if we talked together, him and I think that it would be like, you know what, Roemke, you got this faux Italian thing. It's really tacky. And what are you doing? You're wearing a dress. That's disgusting. You're so sweaty. You can stand to lose a few pounds. I'm like, yeah. And you know what, Donald, your hair's not quite as great as mine. Yeah, I think
it'd be great.
I think it'd be awesome. I'd love to sit down and talk to him.
Yeah.
And another one I'd love to sit down and talk with, besides you, because you're great, is Tucker Carlson. The way that guy laughs just cracks me up.
Yeah. Sometimes, so get this. I try to I'll listen to Joe Rogan's laugh.
Yeah.
And I try to impersonate that sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, just because I'm like, he sounds like he's having so much fun.
He does.
And Tucker Carlson too. Like, there's a good chance we'd break these windows if one of us pulled it off. Just like, you know,
Tucker Carlson is like, I sometimes watch Theo Von, and he had interviewed Theo Von. Theo Von was like,
that one was hilarious.
You laugh like a woman from the 1890s just found a cookie recipe.
But he just embraces it.
He does. And I love when people are like, yep, that's me.
Yeah.
I'm ridiculous.
Because if he was too worried about his craft or about himself, he would have changed that. He would have been like, you know, that might put people off. But he's like, that's how I laugh.
People like authenticity.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's something that Trump really brings to, that makes him appealing to so many people, is he's really authentic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, he makes fun of himself. Look at all these other politicians. They go down south. They start talking like they're from the South. They go into the inner city. They start talking like they're in everybody knows you're putting stuff on.
Yeah.
This isn't real.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just ridiculous when they do it.
Yeah.
But if they could make fun of themselves, they might go farther.
What did you think about Trump's, it was Ben-Daddy? Who's the guy that the terrorist?
Oh, yeah. Baghdadi. He was crying like a little baby. Asked for his mommy to tuck him in at night, but guess what? We already got her too, Baghdadi. You're not going to have your mommy anymore. Lying there like a little dog. It was great. Just the way, like, and Rocket Man, Rocket Man's going to fly his little rocket over here. It's not going to get very far. And these guys are just like, here's this guy who's got a nuclear weapon. He's making fun of them. And then he meets them and is like, he's friendly with them.
He somehow gets along with them.
He makes it he breaks down barriers with that.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. To your point, like, if you can do that with somebody, and get them and if they can then realize, like, you're not just trying to like tear them down, but you're trying to be like,
it's almost with
let's
him.
Relax a little bit.
It's almost with him and with other people like him. And like Don Rickles, like, if this guy makes fun of me, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
I think that is. DeYoung hasn't gotten to that point with me. Like, when I make fun of him, he still doesn't like it. Maybe a little bit. He's getting used to it, but he loves it so much. But, you know, you got to, and this is the thing, too, at Buchenhagen, as I've talked with Pastor Ramirez and Pastor Gilbert and Pastor Uphoff, who were kind of the three founders of it.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, "Ooh, Roemke, you got to do something." I'm like, "I don't want to do anything because I don't want to do anything."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, could you just sit at the table and welcome people? I'm like, "Yeah, but can I make fun of them?" They're like, "Yeah, go for it."
Mm-hmm.
And it's gotten to the point now where like most of the guys, when they come in, they kind of are like, they're starting to they get into it a little bit and they're like, "Oh, this guy's funny, so we can be funny around him."
Mm-hmm.
Or like, I can take it from him. And I'm kind of mean to like some of the nicknames I give him.
What are some nicknames?
Like, one's Dollar Store Lin-Manuel Miranda.
What? Wait, it's a dollar store.
Yeah, he's like a knockoff of Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Who is that?
Robbie Rojas.
Who's Robbie Rojas?
Well, if you see him, you'll say this is the thing. You'll look out. I'm not going to show you. You look for a guy who you think looks like he could be a dollar store Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Okay.
And I guarantee you'll see that guy and you're like, this is the guy.
Okay.
This is the guy.
Yeah.
Richard Simmons' love child. It's another one. You look at these pastors in here and I guarantee you look at one and you'll be like, that's Richard Simmons' love child.
So how do you come up with those so quickly?
Spiritual gift.
Spiritual gift.
That nicknames, I just like doing it.
Yeah.
I just like doing it.
So how do you, to pivot a little bit, how would you tell people, how should they go about thinking about the political process? Right.
Well, I think the first thing is that you're never going to have anybody that you can vote for conscience free.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone's going to have horrible things in their background.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's going to do things you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
If you think you're ever going to be able to vote for someone who has all of your values, you just might as well not vote.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to do that, just be an Amish. They don't vote.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was one of our things. Like with the Anabaptists, they were like, "Oh, we won't participate in any kind of civil activities." Lutherans say, "No, it's good to be a part of this process. There might be times when you have to take oaths, when you have to swear vows, and you have to do these things and it's good if you're doing it in the right way."
Mm-hmm.
And I think another important thing to consider is this isn't like, I think some people think every election is, well, when we hear all the time, every election is the most important election in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've probably heard that too.
Yeah.
Since I ever paid attention to elections, people have always said, this is the most important election of our lifetime. Every time they say this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that gives people a false sense of, well, if this election goes right, then everything will go right after it.
Mm.
And I don't think that's a good way of thinking about it. You got to think about it like, you're playing a sport and you got to get your ball farther down the court than the other side.
Mm-hmm.
You got to make advancements. You might have some setbacks, but if you can get the ball a little bit further, like I don't love Trump's stance on life on all issues. I mean,
mm-hmm.
but this is the guy who got Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe v. Wade as the law of the land.
Mm-hmm.
I wish it would be better, and I wish it wouldn't be allowed at all, but that's a huge win.
Mm-hmm.
And if we say, well, I can't vote for him because he's not 100% pro-life like I'd like him to be, he did more for the pro-life movement than anybody else has.
Mm-hmm.
So look at it that way. I mean, he's moving the ball down the court.
Mm-hmm.
And when we vote, we've got to think more strategically, I think, and say like, yeah, if I vote for this person, they're not going to do everything I want. But if they do 50% of what I want, 20% of what I want, and this person's going to do 0% of what I want, and I let them win, I'm losing.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have 20% of what I want than 0% of what I want.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an important thing. And I think another important thing is not to fall in the trap of thinking this is the most important thing that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like this election is the most important election in the history of the world. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It really isn't. It's important to be involved in it. It's important to be a good citizen and mindfully vote
mm-hmm.
and do it with a prayerful and Christian conscience and attitude. But it's not the most important thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been times in history where it's been very, very much worse. And there'll probably be times when it's very, very much worse again. We still have the gifts of God's word and a sacrament in the church. And there have been times when the church was illegal, and yet God's word still flourished. So even if it should go back to a situation where my life would literally be at risk for preaching God's word, like it is in so many places in the world
today,
you see those people are still Christians, and they still have the joy of the gospel, the forgiveness of sins, of the certainty of their salvation through Jesus Christ. It's not as bad as the world wants us to think it is.
So do you get stressed when like election time's coming on? Like, are you obviously,
I love to go to bed thinking one candidate's going to win landslide. And then I wake up the next morning, they found all these beautiful votes. It gives me so much comfort.
Yeah.
After the last election, I was like, oh, well, we've got this. And I wake up the next day. It doesn't really matter.
Really? Yeah. So the next day you were,
I'm like, okay, this stinks, but life goes on. Nothing's changed right now for me and my family.
Mm-hmm.
So don't get too worried about it.
Yeah. So when you're thinking, let's go to like, you're obviously a Republican. You just, did a prayer at the RNC.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at all the Republican candidates, how do you go about like what's your most important issue, second most? Like what's your kind of process of figuring out?
Well,
who
it's
you
never
vote
like
for
set
there?
in stone.
Okay.
I mean,
It's not systematic.
no, it's not like, they have to check all these boxes all the time. It's more to the point of, first of all, who's going to be most beneficial to me and my family directly? Because I'm the head of my household. I want my wife and children to live in a country that's most conducive to their safety and the ability for me to provide for my family well. That's very important. And I think that should be important for all Christians and for all people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a selfish thing to look to the needs of your own family first.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we should do. That's what we've been called to do. My first vocation is as husband and father, the head of my household. I have to take care of my wife and children.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's always foremost in my mind. Second to my extended family, my church family, what's the best for them? And what's the best for my church family is going to be what's best for my wife and children.
Mm-hmm.
Thirdly, then, what's the best for my city, my county, my state, my country? Those are all things I think we have to take advantage of. We have to look at.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, life issues are very important, but looking at the state of our country and our borders being so open, that is a far more pressing concern directly to me and my family and my community today.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you're seeing all over the place, people are coming in to our country illegally, and we don't know where they're coming from. And there's always this kind of virtue signaling that, well, don't you want them to have a good life too? Yeah, I want them to have a great life, but I don't want them to have a great life at the expense of my family's life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that too many times as Christians, we think that it's a virtue to ignore the needs of those God has placed right around us.
Mm-hmm.
And who's the people God's placed around us first and foremost? It's our families.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not a bad thing. I don't remember exactly how he said it, but Tucker Carlson was talking about like all this stuff. And he's like, it would be an immoral thing if you saw your neighbor's kids had never gotten to go to Disney World. They never got to go there. And so you spent all of your money so you could send your neighbor's kids to Disney World, meanwhile neglecting the real needs of your own children, not feeding them enough, not clothing them, not having enough housing for them. That is an immoral thing.
Mm-hmm.
To give someone else more than, or to advance someone over your own family.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's not, it seems weird that we even feel like to say it's such a thing is selfish, but how can that be selfish?
Mm-hmm.
Our family is the first people that God has given us to take care of. And if we're not taking care of them, I mean, this is where the Lutheran ideas of vocation come into and so valuable. Where Luther will say things like the mother who changes her infant's diaper and feeds her infant is doing a greater work before God in heaven than the monk who prays all day.
Mm-hmm.
That's very good. And, if we can have people who devote themselves to a religious life, not monasticism, but, people should devote themselves to religious lives. That's great, but not at the expense of taking care of families, which are the absolutely foundation of all human society.
Mm-hmm.
The family of father and a mother and children, that's the foundation. That is the strongest building block of our society.
Mm-hmm.
And we're being told now that doing anything for your own family is selfish, or it's white nationalism, or it's Christian nationalism, or it's hetero, whatever, normativity, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
all these buzzwords all these things are they're so mean because you're excluding these other people. So you want me to exclude my family for these other people who hate me
Mm-hmm.
and don't want anything to do with me?
Mm-hmm.
Why should I do that? That makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's foolishness.
Mm.
And to gaslight people into thinking that taking care of your family is somehow wrong is straight from the pits of hell. The devil doesn't want us to take care of our families. That he wants families to be broken up. I mean, there was just I listened to an interview with J.D. Vance, and it was kind of like he'd made a comment a few years ago about single women with cats or something.
Okay.
Like that's
as a joke.
Bad. As a joke.
Yeah.
Like to show the difference between like we need to support fathers and mothers and children and not put all of our efforts to these bitter single women who are cat moms. And like the way that people are blown up, like, oh, that's so terrible. What's wrong about trying to make life good for a mother and her children? What's wrong about look at not just the inner cities, but look at our suburbs where families are broken up. That's not a good thing. No one can say it's a good thing. It's rather objectively evil. And it's objectively bad for our country, for our society, for our communities, for our churches. It's bad for everything. And yet we continuously undermine the importance of the family.
Yeah.
We continually make it difficult for families to be families.
Yeah. I think that's, you can watch this in the way that we communicate about, especially like marriage things, right? We were talking with John Davidson about polyamory. Have you heard about that?
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of the new thing on the block. There's always gonna be a new thing. It keeps getting darker, but that's where you've got just a random group of guys and girls that want to enter into some kind of marriage relationship, but it might be like 2 ladies and 3 guys or something like this.
That's the most selfish thing in the world.
And here's the key is there's kids that are within these.
Yeah.
And the whole conversation is about the desires or the appetites of these adults to do evil things.
Yeah.
But either way, there's never the conversation about, hey, is this good for the kids?
Yeah.
Right.
Or the drag queen story hours.
Oh my goodness.
Which are such a terrible, like everyone's like, oh, well, what's so bad about it? What's so bad about it? Are you kidding me? This guy's up there with his junk hanging out, dancing around like a prostitute in front of little children. And you would have say, what's so bad about it? Have you lost your mind?
Because they care about the adult. And
they care about the adult. They care about this pervert drag queen who wants to groom these children. And they say, well, this is normal. That's not normal. I mean, I can't understand how we've come to a place in this world where parents willingly put their children in these situations. It's not normal.
And it's almost like because they've been tricked into getting caught in this like national ideology, right? To your point, it's this thing that's completely far removed. It's some kind of, my team wants to push this kind of radical acceptance of all things. So that's my primary role. And then my secondary role is my kids.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're probably not even second. They're probably 4th or 5th down the line. So therefore, for the sake of me showing that I'm part of my team, I'm going to subject my children to abuse. It's this misprioritization of what your priority should be.
It's just so perverse that I can't even, like, and when you just try to break it down, and that's the thing that people don't ever do. They don't want to look at things objectively and say, okay, I mean, we'll get to the point where people are saying math is like racist because it promotes like white colonialism. Math is math. You can't change it.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't this like the classic line from George Orwell, 2 + 2 = 5? If you can get people to say that, you can get them to say anything because math is objective. You just can't change it.
Yeah.
But they want, and these other things, the objective reality that a husband and a wife having children and raising those children is a good thing. It's a good thing for a mother to be home with her children. That's a good thing. And people shriek when you say this. How is this? I just don't even know. I mean, it's the devil.
Did you watch What is a Woman? The documentary?
I did not.
You have not?
I haven't yet. I don't have Daily Wire.
Okay. I'll have to send it to you.
Okay.
But there's 2 scenes that are absolutely hilarious. And one is he goes, and do you know kind of like the way he goes about doing it? He's kind of very, this like fake stoic.
Yeah.
I've
seen some clips of it.
So there's one, he goes into this like store owner. And I guess the store owner it was like some kind of politician who was a transgender, and he was a guy that was, dressing as a girl, and he came in and he's like, you need to call me a girl. It's like this like kind of hillbilly owner of like this store. And he's like, I ain't doing that. And but he was just like such a simple guy.
Yeah.
But he was like spewing wisdom from this like very simple perspective of like what the heck? And then they go, and then he goes to I think it's the Maasai tribe in Kenya, and he's interviewing them about what is a woman. And they're just looking at Matt like he's an absolute idiot. Yeah. And they're like, what do you mean? And he's so serious about it. And he's like and then he's like slowly kind of giving some of these like liberal ideologies on this. And they're just like, you're an absolute idiot. And these are these people, right, with no education and things like that. But the point is, they've got much more wisdom than the one with the PhD who's making some kind of argument.
Well, I think that it's a real thing. People who don't have real problems make problems up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem with our culture is we don't have real problems. I mean, even though things are not as great as they were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we still don't have real problems.
Right.
I mean, we're sitting in a climate-controlled, nicely furnished room in a city where we don't really fear for our lives. We'll go home to our homes and, a little bit. It is Racine, but it's not as bad. People aren't really afraid.
We were leaving yesterday after Vespers.
Yeah.
Alex Sable and I.
You see the police shut down everything?
We heard the gunshots.
Oh, did you?
It was across the street from us.
Yeah.
It was probably 50 yards away. And it was, I think, right behind the house. But It was like right there. And like the whole clip got released. And like I like threw myself behind a car. I was like, those are gunshots. And
you
then
didn't
sure
stand
enough,
up and say, fight, fight, fight.
Yeah.
You know what? Maybe your man card needs to be checked because you should have went and fought them.
What a testament to that, right? I mean, my reaction was to dive, and his reaction was to stand up and say, "Fight!"
What'd you do with Waluigi over here? Did you throw him in front of you? Use him as a human shield.
Human shield. That's part of his job description as broadcast engineer. Yeah, I'm not. You would. This is why I'm better behind the camera than in front of the country.
Yeah. Well, it takes a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And wasn't that telling? After that happened, how so many people were like, why isn't he like hiding himself? Why is he out in public again? Like they really thought this would just turn him into a puddle.
Mm-hmm.
But we need men who
He's courageous.
Yeah.
He is absolutely courageous.
He is.
And I've thought about this. So like, because you would get this as a pastor, or anyone who's got kind of some kind of public, position. But it's, if you've ever had like someone like criticize something that you do, like that eats at you,
Mm-hmm.
So just imagine not just like a couple people that are like, I don't like what this guy's doing, like we were talking with Eckhart, and he was talking about how he had part of his congregation was really rebelling against him, and it really kind of messed with him. And he talked about that on camera.
Mm-hmm.
Now just imagine not just that, but like 40% of the entire country is on a daily basis slandering you. And a lot of it's based on lies, and some of it might be based on true things from the past. But the ability to take that and to deal with that's heroic to get to that point where you can do something.
I think that though that is one of the cornerstones of being a man.
Mm-hmm.
Is you do what you do, and it is what it is, and that's it.
Mm.
You don't like it? Tough. I did it. What are you going to do? Fight me? Bring it on.
Mm. Who would win in a fight, me or you?
I've got the size advantage.
Mm-hmm.
You probably got a stronger heart.
That's never good when you have to go to something you can't.
If I could
quantify.
just knock
like,
you, if I could just fall on you, no problems. You wouldn't be getting back up. But like that's the thing that is part of being a man is you have to say, part of being the head of the household, being a man in any situation in life, you've got to say, this is what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I might not be right. And if I'm wrong, you can tell me and I'll live with that. But I don't think it helps men to just stew on things and like, oh, he said something that hurt my feelings and I'm going to be upset about it. Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Get over it. You do things I don't like too. I get over it.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to get over it. And it sounds like it's glib, but I think we've got too little of this in society, too little of telling people this is just the reality. Suck it up, buttercup. This is your life. Get over it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an important pastoral tool too. Especially when you're dealing with people like I said earlier, elderly people who just complain all the time that they're getting old. Why doesn't the Lord take me? I want to die. I want to be done with this world. You know what? That's not your choice. You got to just suck it up.
Mm-hmm.
You got to deal with it. This is where God's put you. You can complain about it and be upset all you want, but at the end of the day, this is where you're going to be until God calls you home.
Mm-hmm.
So let's put on our big boy pants and live life.
Yeah.
And that's something I think the more you encounter these kind of things, just like anything in your life, the more you do something, the more the easier it gets to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So the more times people tell you, I don't like what you did. And the more times you say, okay, well, too bad. It's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes easier to do the next time. And I think that's why Trump can do this, is because people are constantly telling me they don't like what he does.
Mm-hmm.
Does it seem to bother him? I don't think he loses any sleep. I honestly don't.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't think he goes to bed at night and like puts his head on Melania's bosom and says, they don't like me. What am I going to do? Because I think Melania coming from where, like the Czech Republic or something?
Something like that.
Slovakia?
Slovakia. I think that's what it is. Yeah.
I think she'd be like, you're not man. You need to be man. And she'd be like, and he'd be like, okay.
Can you do Melania impersonations?
I've not heard her talk much.
Okay, that was good.
Oh, it's just my generic Eastern European.
Yeah. Do you have other ones you do?
I do all kinds of things. I mean, I just am always making some silly thing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you do like a Chinese impersonation?
I don't think I want to.
As Xi? Could you do Xi?
Winnie the Pooh?
No, Xi. Like
Winnie the Pooh?
Is that the thing?
That's the CCP guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody calls him Winnie the Pooh and he hates it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I like some honey. That's my Xi impersonation.
That was good. Yeah.
Oh, I want your honey. He's a communist, you know.
Yeah. Can you do Matt Harrison? Would you dare do Matt Harrison?
No, I don't want to.
Okay. Smart man.
Off the cameras.
Off the cameras. Okay.
I kind of just have one presidential impersonation. So to be like, I'm Matt Harrison. I've got a beautiful mustache. I play a banjo. Deal with it. That's just my generic, like, presidential. I'll do that for any president.
Yeah. So any kind of leader, you just go with the Trump one.
Yeah.
Can you tell us? We got like just a couple minutes, and you got to go present. Got any jokes for us?
Probably not. That would be appropriate.
Not that would be appropriate.
Yeah.
You have to like vet him beforehand.
Yeah. I mean, you just don't want to ask me.
What do you think about David Ramirez?
Oh, that guy is such a pain in my butt. That's why I love him, because he is just like, he is toxic masculinity infleshed.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that dude does is toxic, and it makes me a stronger person to be around him. Because if I feel like I don't kill him, I've held back something that's important inside of me.
It's important to have someone like that.
It is. It is. Absolutely is. You need to have friends that on some level they fundamentally don't like.
Yeah.
They really have to have friends that you're like, you know what? I can't stand you, but I guess we're together, so we're going to have to do this.
He's got kind of like a bull, right? Like when he walks in, he's kind of like a bull.
Yeah,
like he's built strong, but it's like he's just like he's like leaning forward.
Yeah, he's very aggressive.
Yeah.
And before this, with like whenever I would like say like David Ramirez says this, I would always be like a quasi Trump voice.
Mm-hmm.
It's because he's got kind of that same energy, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wish I would have known I had a joke. I could have thought of one that was appropriate.
The Winnie the Pooh one was good.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's the first time I did Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to find more of Jim Roemke, you can go to your local stand-up comedy.
No,
he'll be touring,
to Messiah Lutheran Church.
Or go to Messiah Lutheran Church. Where's that at?
Yeah. It's in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Yep. Do you have any? If people wanted to hear more from you, is there any place that you've written or spoken?
We have a YouTube channel, but we haven't been posting sermons to it. But there are years and years of sermons on there.
Okay. So if you want to see kind of natural comedy in
if you want to hear appropriate good word and sacrament preaching, that would be a good place.
Okay.
But come to the Buchanan conference.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to get a picture of Jim or of Bennett's mustache before we finish?
No thanks.
No thanks.
Don't be gay. That's gross. That thing's going to haunt my nightmares. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jim, thanks for sitting down.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.
You too.